Welcome, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. We have a fantastic show coming up for you tonight. In studio guest Nicole Antoinette is with us, talking about the Shadow Dimension. Coming up next. Welcome back, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, my co-host is Victoria Mundae. And down in the chat room, Alina moderating the chat. A fantastic show coming up for you tonight. Nicole Antoinette from Guiding Echo Psychic Medium is with us to help us discuss and get in depth on the Shadow Dimension. Yeah, we're going inside the 6-part docu-series that was released earlier this year, back in May, is now streaming free on Tubi TV. So you're going to want to check it out after this show. So, Nicole, welcome to the studio.
Why, thank you, Mike. It's very nice to be here.
Yeah, I mean, you had to travel a long ways to get here.
I did. It was a struggle, but we made it work.
We did. Yeah, even, with COVID and all the crazy stuff going on, you're able to trudge through and get all the way here from down the hall.
Yes. Yeah. Mask free.
Mask free. Wow. That's taking a chance right there.
It is.
All right. So we're talking Shadow Dimension this evening. I know a lot of people are probably going to be interested in commentary about our good friend Coyote Chris Sutton, which he passed away yesterday. We'll get to that a little bit later this evening. We're not going to dive into that right off because I think it would just traumatize us for the rest of the show. But yeah, Chris was a extremely good friend. He was part of the Shadow Dimension. He was in the last 2 episodes, so we will get to him a little bit later on. But where I do want to start off, Victoria was a part of it. Victoria was in 2 episodes, primarily the second episode. So we're going to talk about Victoria's experience that she related about shadow people down there in Texas. You may even have one in your house right now, right?
Yes, he's upstairs. He scared the crap out of me. I broke out my disco 1980s move. I spun around real quick about 45 minutes ago, and not kidding, there was a man standing right there. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
I got it. I don't know who it is. This is a new one.
So Nicole is going to be talking about something that I had her look at when I got back from the one and only Conjuring house that is in Harrisville, Rhode Island, the house that the movie The Conjuring is based off of and was a highlight for the Shadow Dimension docu-series. Carl Johnson and I, as well as others like his brother Keith, went out there to investigate because Carl has observed shadow entities at this location on a number of occasions, going all the way back to 1973. Of course, the Perrin family also experienced this. We have Andrea Perrin within the docu-series talking extensively about her experiences there. And I had an experience in her former bedroom in which I got extremely lightheaded. And then later on, I captured a photo that may have given us an indication as to what may have spawned this shadow activity that's usually seen up there. Now, the way Carl describes it is as a shadowy smoke. Andrea has seen that as well up there when she was a girl. I have a video clip here from the Shadow Dimension episode 4 in which I'm reviewing footage and I call Nicole over. So we're going to play that. It's a couple minutes long. Here we go. What do you make of this? This is the middle bedroom of the Conjuring house, but this here I could kind of maybe explain away from something to do with the camera, but this here is the entire window that's behind this wall. I don't understand how you can have the entire window kind of protrude out like that. This is where, right on the other side of that window, I suddenly got lightheaded and almost passed out while I was interviewing Keith. And it was through this doorway that Carl saw that black smoke for the first time come out from there. But this window thing is just, Have you seen something like that before? That's kind of crazy.
Okay, you're saying that this is a window that's over there.
Yeah, you can kind of see the very edge of it right there, but basically the entire window is back behind this wall straight that way.
But yeah, we're seeing it here.
We're seeing it here.
That makes no sense.
No.
My name is Nicole Guillaume, and I am a psychic medium. And what that means is that I'm able to connect with the spirits of people who have crossed over into the other realms, other dimension, heaven, Summerland, whatever you want to call it. In addition to that, I'm also able to pick up on energies. And when I talk about energies, that is different from spirit beings, because energies can be the living vibration that an area may have. So every house, every home, every land, basically every place on the earth and probably outside of it has its own energy. So some energies are neutral, some are good, some are great, and others not so friendly. And so when you run into these energies that are not so good, that's when people can get sick. It's when they can experience some very strange occurrences. It's also where people start to feel a lot of fear. So it's not necessarily that the energies are bad, it's that they're not a good match for us as humans. And so that's why we can get sick when we're around them. We're very uncomfortable. What it seems like to me is, it almost seems like portal activity, because to me this tells me that this whole house has an energy of its own, and it's an energy that actually moves and shifts. So if this is a window that's over there, it's almost as if this thing's moving in time on its own. Like it's its own entity and shifting things forward. It doesn't seem like this energy shifts. But in here, this feels like I don't know how to explain it, almost like a circular, it's just like in my mind's eye, I see it moving, almost like...
Yeah, moving, but the fact that you call it circular is really intriguing to me, because Andrea would always talk about that sometimes it would enter a bubble.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that. But yeah, that's what I'm feeling. It's like this circular, like I want to say a merry-go-round, like something that shifts, something that moves. And it does feel circular, like it's moving around.
Okay. A little bit of a long clip, I know.
Just a little.
Yeah.
I have questions already.
All right. Before you get to the questions, and first off, for those listening to the podcast later or on KGRA or KPNL, sorry that you didn't see those. But you can come out here to the Edge of the Rabbit Hole channel and go ahead and watch this, and also, of course, watch the Shadow Dimension on Tubi TV for that. We also have a $10 super chat from Tom McNicholas. Says, good to be able to stop in live tonight. R.I.P. Chris. Thank you very much, Tom, for the $10 super chat. So, all right, Victoria has questions.
First question. How did you shoot that? What kind of camera? Was it still camera, video camera, phone?
I believe that was with my iPhone.
Okay. Because if you use like an SLR back in the olden days when we used film, when the flap goes up and down, it would cause something like that. But since you used your cell phone, there's no flap, so there's nothing there. And I heard you talk about, and I can't remember if I heard you talk about this somewhere else or if this is actually in the docu-series, but her room was over where the well is. How much activity is due to the well, or is it all throughout the house?
Well, and that's an assessment that I've made of the house, and I've talked to Andrea about this a little bit, and we're going to have her on the show in a few weeks, and we're going to dive a bit more into that. But that well room is essentially, it's an open well in the basement. There's water in it. The walls are made of limestone, and then they are capped with these granite blocks. So it's like a perfect little power plant. So when Nicole started talking about, feeling a portal right there, it's like that's exactly, what I was thinking, is that this thing is generating portal activity because there's so much paranormal activity that's happening, up and down from that room. So that's, can you kind of describe, Nicole, a little bit about the, portal feeling that you're getting off of that photo? And I'm going to pop the photo up here for people to get a good look at.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I was saying in there, I don't know how to describe it other than, so it's almost as if picture that there's almost like an orb or an aura in that room beyond the doorway, and this aura and this orb expand to all the walls in that room. And I believe that this aura at this moment is it would be spinning through the right. It'd be spinning to the right. So that's why you're seeing everything kind of shifting that way, because the light is shifting that way. And, we just have these interesting blurred lines that are all in this picture. And so I don't know that it's too much of a feeling. It's a sensation that I can't quite put my hand, kind of like when we were at the Hinsdale house.
Okay.
And I was able to, that's for season 2.
Yeah, season 2, Shadow Dimension, Hinsdale House. One of the locations.
So every once in a while, I just kind of get a sensation of something and I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like when you experience a different emotion for the first time and you're like, I don't know what this emotion is. Like, this is new. And it's kind of the same with being intuitive or being a medium. You tune into these different sensations, or you have these different experiences, and they're so foreign to you that it's really kind of hard to put words to what you're seeing or sensing. So yeah, the best thing I can say is it's just like I was showing that circular motion happening in that room. And so I think that it spins at different times. I think it spins in different directions. I think that this house just has a mind of its own. I wouldn't be surprised if that energy moves throughout the house either. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's really fascinating stuff.
Does the activity just happen in the house, or is it out on the grounds too, or all over the place?
Yeah, out on the grounds too. So, it's not just, confined to that room or the rooms below it. It's throughout the whole house. It just seems to be like extra activity within those particular rooms, or some of the more interesting things, like the time slip that Andrea and her mother witnessed there one time, where, the family showed up in the dining room, and they're able to see each other and actually interact with each other. And so that was from that room. A lot of the interactions in the bedroom that were reported were in there. Of course, the black smoke that we're talking about, the shadow entity, has been seen up there a number of times. So it's just fascinating. And again, for me, seeing this shift, the term I've given it is interdimensional phasing, because it seems like a phase shift there. You look at the bed at the bottom, and the chair that's right there. Thank you. None of that has been shifted. None of that is moving. But you see that basically from the doorway onward, and that window that you see that's kind of protruding across to the chalkboard that's back there. It's a chalkboard that they had set up there. That is actually behind this little wall piece, and it's the exterior window in the top middle of this photo here.
Oh, wow.
But when you tune into the Shadow Dimension and you watch that episode, you'll be able to see why that picture is so odd. Because when he first showed it to me, I didn't quite understand it, because I didn't know the format of the room. And then when we watched the clip together, and I was able to see how it's not like that window is right behind that other window. And it's not right up against the chalkboard, which is what I thought the room was like. I thought it was a small room. So here's the chalkboard, and here's the window right here. The window almost has a little hallway down it. It goes back. So when you watch Shadow Dimension, you watch that episode, you'll have a better understanding of how that room is laid out and why that picture should not have happened. Why it was weird.
So real quick, we have a $5 super chat from Robert Hanna. He says, my condolences to Chris Sutton's family. He seemed like such a nice guy. Too bad I never got to meet him. R.I.P. Chris. Thank you very much, Robert. And yes, our condolences again to Chris's family. So question here from Sarah Youssef. So what are the elements necessary to create a portal? Really, you're talking like electromagnetic energy. So when I discuss this, and we discuss it at length regarding like the Alaska Triangle, people kind of often get confused, like vortex and portal. They're actually two different things. The portals can basically be spawned by the vortex energy, which is basically usually like earth energy that wells up from the magnetic core of the earth and kind of spawns off all of these different effects. But I believe, like with the Conjuring house, because of the way that room is put together, it's able to harness that. And you see this at like different locations, like the pyramids, Stonehenge, these ancient sites of power that knew that this energy was there, and they were trying to tap into it and harness it so they could do things like create the portals. So, do you agree?
I agree with this conclusion. Yes.
You concur?
I concur.
Why didn't I concur?
Except you forget the earth is hollow.
It's hollow in areas. You and I disagree on this. I believe that there are very large pockets created by the Earth's magma, and it's receded from those locations because we see the magnitudes all over the place. So I think there are big cavernous areas like that. But as far as the idea of completely hollow inside and there's like its own sun and all that stuff in the middle,
No, it's not like the aliens and the Nazis are down there watching YouTube or anything. Yeah, and flying out to the North Pole. I have seen some older houses. When you look at them, like from an aerial view, they're formed in kind of a cross. Is the Conjuring house like that at all, where it was a main house and they branched out any, or is it just house?
Yeah, the Conjuring house, I mean, it's been built onto many times. So that's why when you look at this this photo, there's an interior window because they've added onto it. But as far as like the neighborhood, it used to be the only house for miles. The property actually extended into Massachusetts. It's near the border, but over time they added other houses. So there's not really it's just kind of a old road that kind of goes up from Rhode Island to Massachusetts, and all the houses are kind of in a row there.
But if you were like in an airplane and you look down, it wouldn't look like it was a cross or anything.
No,
it didn't have any special shape. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Now,
where is
the house is eerily shaped like a pentagram? No.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, if they had a lot of kids, that would make sense. Especially daughters, they don't want to be get away from me. They don't want to be near each other.
What's interesting is Andrea does talk about in the Shadow Dimension about how you had all these little girls there with all of their energy that could have been helping to fuel all the activity there at the Conjuring house, which we'll talk to her about that when we have her on a few weeks. But that was one of those stories because there are a lot of comments from people there's all kinds of people that follow Andrea and her work and the story of the Conjuring house. But a lot of people commented that Andrea had told a number of stories for the Shadow Dimension that people had not heard before, and that was one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When I did ghost tours out here, we did one with, I think we had like 40 or 50 girls, and they were teenage dance girls. And so this whole bus rolls up. We had so much activity that night.
I bet.
It was girls do that. Anyway, where is the dining room in relation to Andrea's room in the well? Would it be stacked up, or is it?
Basically it's, so you have the well room, the parlor, which is where Andrea and her mother saw that's where they were standing when they saw those people. Right. Basically it was the next room over. Okay. So yeah, is
it an alignment sort of, or nowhere near?
Oh, it's like right next to it.
Okay.
So it becomes a question of this is what I believe. So the energy from that room, from that energy that's there was, how do I want to state this? Basically affecting their consciousness, where they were able to slip their consciousness from one moment in time into another moment in time. So not like a physical teleportation, but the consciousness. And so that was able to, because they were standing right above it, it was able to,
That's interesting. Okay.
So Tom McNicholas has a question here, though. Does it matter which way it spins to increase activity, clockwise or counterclockwise?
I don't know that it matters which way it spins. But I mean, if you're really going to try to observe it more, which I don't think anyone's really observed that portion of it. Energy is always giving us information. And so the best way for us to be able to know what information it's giving us is to, of course, like observe it, study it, take note of it. So it's possible that if it's spinning one way, it means something. If it's spinning another, it might mean something else. Kind of like a pendulum, you know, and pendulums are reliant on some form of energy. So there could be some type of meaning to it. I don't know what it is because I don't, you know, I haven't spent any time at the Conjuring House and haven't really spent a whole lot of time studying the phenomenon there. But directions, I mean, they can be important. But without sitting down and really taking note of what happens during an energy shift or right afterwards, it's kind of hard to tell. And plus, you know, just like each person is different, every house is different, every land is different. They're all going to have different energy signatures. And so that in that way, they're all going to have different ways of saying hello. You know, they're all going to have different ways of reaching out and speaking to you. And so, you know, if you're near an area where there's a lot of energy shifts, or you live in an area where there's a lot of energy shifts, you might want to just, you know, get a journal or a notebook and just start to write down what you're noticing. And, you know, if you feel an energy shift, write down what that feels like, write down what happens afterwards. And then you can kind of see if there's some type of pattern developing. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. But like I said, every land, every house speaks a little differently. So,
you know, it's really interesting. We had Johnny Enoch on, and he was, I think it was before the show, he was telling me that, because I used to work at Six Flags over Texas, and Disneyland, Six Flags, and all these places are all in the same parallel. Right. And they all have carousels, and they all go counterclockwise. So perhaps spinning the energy out there, you know.
Yeah, Johnny talks a lot about the way Disneyland has been developed to harness some of that energy. You've been there how many times?
I practically lived there, yeah. I grew up there. I used to work at a radio station called Radio Oz, so we used to do a broadcast there live on Saturdays, live at Disneyland or Disneyland Live on. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So yeah, I've been there many times. One of the things that's fascinating too is the protective plants that are around there. Like they've got sage and lavender, and so I'm like, they've got occultists that are doing the botany here. Like,
well, and there's the whole Club 33 thing.
There's that, yeah.
That's money there. But if you even think about the teacups, they all go. I mean, almost all the rides go counterclockwise.
They do, yeah.
So
psychological stuff right there.
Question here from Android Purity. He says, you mentioned black mist earlier. Do you all believe that black mist is totally separate entities, phenomena from shadow figures, or are they connected somehow? So there are a large variety of different types of shadow entities. So the black mist is one of those. That is just like a vaporous cloud, or you might see it as black smoke. It really depends on the particular shadow. So some of them are, you know, human spirits. Some of them are interdimensional beings. Some of them are extraterrestrials, time travelers, light beings. You know, which might sound a little strange. Pick up the book A Walk in the Shadows, complete guide to shadow people. Shameless plug. But what's interesting is, and we're actually going to touch on this a little bit later, is at Mineral Springs Hotel, Alton, Illinois. I have seen rolling black smoke, kind of like what, you know, Carl and Andrea have described there at the Conjuring House. Rolling black smoke morph into the apparition of a little girl. So again, it really kind of comes down to exactly, you know, what that particular shadow entity may be. I mean, just looking at it right off, you're probably not going to know immediately, unless it's, you know, ends up like with Rob Guttrow, it ended up being his aunt. He knew, but usually it takes additional research and investigation. So with that said, Victoria, I would like to get to your shadow experiences, talking about shadows being human spirits.
Oh, the one in Old Town Spring or the one upstairs?
The one in Old Town Spring. Yeah, the one upstairs is new, but I do have a clip from you, not the entire clip, but a good chunk of
Yeah.
it from Shadow Dimension episode 2. You guys didn't know that you were going to be getting sneak peeks and stuff
No.
of the series. So, and again, you want to watch the whole thing, you watch it for free, Tubi TV. So let me get there it is. Here's Victoria.
I feel that it is possible to build a relationship with a shadow person. When I was doing the ghost tours out in Old Town Spring, they would always tell me, hey, when you're done with your tour, come on over and we'll do the paranormal. You can do the investigation with us. I'm like, okay, sure. And this was like really the first time, and I was all excited. I'm going to do a paranormal investigation. So I was all excited to go and learn about this. And so I was in the ice house with the girl who was leading the investigation. So we're out there at midnight, and you can hear somebody walking around the ice house. I'm like, oh. And so we were in the ice house, and you could hear somebody walking around out there, and we are away from everybody else. There's nobody else in that town. We were standing there with all of our tools and everything, and the light broke. And so I naturally looked over, and I saw a shadow go by. I was like, oh, I hear somebody out there. There's somebody out there. And she's like, nope, there's nobody out there. Sure enough, he comes around the other door. The light breaks again. I look over there. I'm like, okay, there is somebody over there. So I run outside, and I'm looking for someone because there is no way, because it's gravelly over there. It's part of the railroad. And you could hear someone walking on the gravel. It's very distinct, very loud, like a large, heavy man. I run out there. There's nobody around. I run to the other side. There's nobody around. And you could tell if somebody was there because there's no place to go, really. I came back in, and I said, okay, there was somebody out there, but I don't know who it was. A few minutes later, he goes by again. I was like, oh my God, he is so tall. Did you see him that time? And she goes, yeah, I saw him. So he's so tall, I can't even see his head. He reminds me of my grandpa, because my grandfather was huge. And he was a welder, and he wore overalls, and that's what the man had on. And we would go to other parts of the town, and you could hear him walking. And then you would see the shadows on the buildings. Somebody was casting a huge shadow. Nobody is out there. So I was saying, well, maybe he's like my grandpa. He just kind of protects me. So whenever I would walk around on these investigations, 1, 2, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, just a handful of us little gals out there with our equipment and our K2s and everything. And I felt like he was protecting me, kind of, because there was one night I was leading a tour, and we were going to go in the ice house, pitch black, dark moon, can't see anything. And I start to walk in, and something hits me on top of the head so hard, I doubled over. And I just knew I walked into a board or something. So I bent over, and I might have said an expletive or something. And I stood up, and I was like, man. And I was looking, I had my phone, and I was looking around for the board. And the man behind me goes, you almost walked into that spider web. And it was a huge spider web across the door, big old spider in it too. So I am quite confident it was him.
So your shadow buddy saved you from the big bad spider, huh?
I don't do spiders, no.
What kind of spider was it? Do you know?
Black Widow. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello. No, they're huge, and they can make spider webs so quickly.
Yeah.
So, no, I know it was him. I mean, because it sounds silly, because there were times I was out there again one night, and where the street turns, it comes to a perfect V, and you can't see on the other side. And I had my obelisk in my hand, and I was walking around, and it was probably 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was with the other girl, and it goes, danger. And we're like, oh, okay. And we stopped, and these 2 men walked by. And it's like, okay, what are you doing out here at 2 o'clock in the morning? Young men should be home in bed. So, yeah. Had he not stopped us, we would have gone around the corner, and it wouldn't have been good, probably. But
so this ice house, did he usually hang around the ice houses, or is it all around the town?
The story is about 100 miles away, the train was coming into another town, and it was about 2 hours late, and it was the signal man that was on the back of the train. Now, since they were coming in 2 hours late, they had to refuel and get water and coal and everything. And he sees another train coming around the corner, so he jumps off because, this is like 18 whatever, and there's no electricity. So he goes running down there to stop the other train to let him know, hey, we're still here. But his crew saw the lights swinging back and forth, and they go, oh, well, we need to back up. So they backed up over him, and he was decapitated. Oof. So they moved him to the depot that was there, and he had to wait, a couple of days while his family came to retrieve his body. They moved the depot to Old Town Spring. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps now. They moved the depot to Old Town Spring, when they did that, there started being mysterious ghost lights on the train track. So then people started seeing his shadow. And I didn't know about a headless, train engineer. I just thought he was a really tall man and I couldn't see his head. But she's like, no, he doesn't have a head. So I was thinking, since his last moments on this earth was trying to stop the train and protect everybody and help, he's a very benevolent spirit who does hang out there. And there's, it's in your book. There's that real nasty shadow entity I sent you a picture of. Mm-hmm. There's some really nasty things out there, and he does come around, and not to go over there. So, yeah, so
you would have this good shadow person, essentially. Mm-hmm. I mean, human spirit,
right,
protecting you from other shadow entities that are around there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's definitely, because there's a lot of bad things that have happened. It was a gambling town, a Wild West town, sort of, brothels, gambling saloons, lynchings, bad things happened out there.
Yeah. It's just, I find stories like that very interesting, because you do have a, large number of people that try to say, all shadow entities are bad, evil, nefarious, malevolent, and that sort of thing. But it's really dependent upon that particular shadow, like yours in case here. He's a protector.
Yeah, there's another lady that's out there also. We never see her, but we can smell her perfume. And it's just this disembodied. I took my daughter out there one day and I said, what does this smell like? And she goes, "Ooh, it smells like grandma." I was like, okay, it's old lady perfume is what it smells like. And whenever you're out there having a good time and you're laughing and you're with the kids, then you start to smell this perfume and you're like, oh, okay, so she's, she likes us being out there. But then you know when to stay away from the other people. So stay away from the spiders. No.
Right, stay away from the spiders. So Sarah asks, how often do you get a sensation of danger when encountering shadow people? I would say, that's probably for anybody. I've probably had the most encounters of all of us right here, right? Yeah. Nicole's.
I would assume.
Yeah. Well, you've experienced a lot of different types of entities and spirits.
Yeah, I've experienced a lot of entities and whatnot. I've seen some pretty scary things, but oddly enough, I don't recall ever seeing a shadow person. I've seen a dark thing out of the corner of my eye, but that pales in comparison to you and Victoria and others who have seen it front and center. So I'm kind of relieved I haven't seen that, because I think that might be a little unsettling for me. But if I were to see it, I would just roll with it. I would probably pretend I was cool with it, even though inside I'd be like, oh my God. But yeah.
Well, it's like tonight, I spun around on my heel real quick and it startled me and I went, oh. And you naturally blink a couple of times and then it's gone. And then my daughter's like, oh yeah, another one. Shadow cats. They're not my shadow cats, but they are here. They're all over the place.
Well, that's the thing, I think, with ghosts and with shadow people and really anything like that, is they just appear. And so it's startling. So when people get that feeling of being startled, they think it's, they're scared in that moment. So then they start to think this thing is evil because there's that feeling of fear. It's like, no, even when he pops up somewhere that I'm not expecting, we've both scared each other. Turning down the hall at the same time. Yeah. So we'll both be turning the hall at the same time, not hearing each other, run into each other. So and the same thing happens with shadow people, with ghosts, with other types of spirits, and even normal people. So just because people have that first sensation of being startled and that is scary, that doesn't mean, of course, that those things are evil. It just means they showed up where you weren't expecting them and you had a reaction.
Yeah.
That's all it means.
They don't scare me. Well, that one does. But most of the time it's like, oh, hello, hi, how are you? And then they're gone by that time, but
a lot of times they're darting across the room or down the hall or whatever, and they're just kind of doing their own thing. I mean, if I had to put a number on it, how often? Because the majority of the shadow entities that I've interacted with are just rather benign. They're just there. Other people like you, Victoria, you have the one that's you deem a protector, so that one's more benevolent, and other people have reported ones that are more benevolent in nature. I've had like the very first shadow experience I had. I mean, I was 8 years old, and the thing physically interacted with me. Looking back on it, it wasn't being malicious, but it did physically interact with me. So, but at that time, sure, I was scared. They're the ones that creeped me out coming out of the woods in Maryland one time. I was not investigating at the time. I was there for something personal. So, and I talk about that story in the Shadow Dimension. So that one really creeped me out. And then the black mist at the Edmond case, Edmond, Oklahoma, that that one was, it stopped the cat dead in its tracks, and I'm looking in there, and that one was just kind of like a heavy feeling, not necessarily danger. So a few occasions where it was pretty creepy, but most of the times they're just dart across the room or down the hall. They're just there, not really doing much of anything. Most just kind of stand, watch, and observe. And so many of these, if they're like an interdimensional being or something, even like with the ETs, they could just be watching and studying us, that sort of thing.
Yeah, when we were in the Haunted Hill House, I think it was last year we went. Time is all the same. Anyway, I took a picture, and we were all in this one room, all of us. But in the doorway, there was a man standing with his arms crossed, looking like, "What are y'all doing?" And I've seen more and more of that. The more I get deeper into the paranormal, the more it's like, well, what are you doing? Why? They seem very curious. So like the man upstairs, he was just like, what are y'all doing? We're playing with cats. They're not mine, but we were playing with the cats.
Not your cats.
One's my life partner, but not my cat.
There you go. Another question here from Android Purity. Mike, what made you come to the conclusion that a shadow entity could be an alien in some cases? Is it explained in your book? You mean like aliens like Grace? Yes, it is explained in my book, A Walk in the Shadows. So definitely grab it if you have not yet. Something that we're probably going to talk a little bit about in Shadow Dimension Season 2. We don't really get into the alien thing in Season 1. But there are a number of ways this could work. For one, a number of these interdimensional beings that we are dealing with very well could be interdimensionally traveling here from another place in the universe. Anything that is not native to our planet, we would consider an extraterrestrial alien. Could be, yes, interdimensionally as a ultra-terrestrial, so something that is already here, but kind of phasing in and out of our dimension as well. That would not necessarily be an ET, but something coming from another planet, yes. If it's a physical being like a gray, one possible idea is they're trying to utilize some sort of cloaking device so that we don't see and observe them, because they're trying to observe us, but perhaps they don't quite understand our physiology, and their cloaking device doesn't necessarily work with our eyes, and so we kind of see them as like a bit of a shadow or like a shimmer man or something like that. But this could be the case for a number of different things. And Nicole, I really like your light being idea, and I have incorporated that into my book as well. Can you explain that one real quick?
Sure. So the idea that a shadow being could be a light entity comes from the idea that our brain is only able to process so much information at one time. But here's the kicker. It processes more than we're aware of. And so if we have 10 million pieces of information that our mind is constantly absorbing, what our mind does is it tunes into the parts of that information that makes sense to us, that it can actually kind of build a picture with. So, for example, right now, my brain is giving me an image of Michael sitting here and, the camera right here, the computer screen in front of us. So that's all stuff that my brain is able to understand and form into a picture, so that I can understand that information and be aware of my surroundings. But there's other things that my brain is also interpreting that I'm not even aware of. And the same is true for all of us. So when our brain sees something that it doesn't understand, one of the things that it does, which is quite fascinating, is it blocks it out. And so there are stories of when different ships were coming to, back in before when we still thought the earth was flat and we were testing the waters with different ships, and we were going to where supposedly those ships were going to fall off. There are legends and stories of how when native lands, when lands that had not been discovered by England or whatnot, as those ships were approaching the Americas or whatnot, the natives weren't really able to understand what that ship was, and so they weren't able to see it. Or if they did see it, it was blocked out. It looked like something foreign to them until the ship actually landed. And, people got off of the ship and then they were able to understand what was happening. But that's an example of the brain blocking out something because it is so foreign. So that's where the idea that these could be light beings, because if our eyes are not able to absorb that amount of light, it could just block it out. And we see something similar happen when we stare at the sun when we're not supposed to. Like as a kid, I was kind of a rebel in that thing. When people are like, don't look at the sun, you'll go blind. I'm like, oh, really? Stare right at it. And what would happen is there's this black swirl that starts to cover the sun, and before you know it, you can't see the sun anymore.
I just edge of the rabbit hole is not recommending you do this at home.
This is true.
Right.
We don't recommend it, but
Right.
I
did that
I've
too.
given that example, like with the light bulb, and I've done that at in the conferences. Using the light bulb, stare at the light bulb and say, I'm not recommending you do this, but if you do, this is what happens. It turns, basically you just see the silhouette of the bulb after a certain point in time.
Yeah, and so that's where the idea came to me. I was like, wait a second, what if these are actually light beings? Because, like Mike was saying, there are plenty of stories of shadow people and shadow entities being very loving, being very protective. I have a friend who talks about how she grew up in foster care, and when she saw shadow people, she felt very comforted by them. Mm-hmm. And so she got along with the shadow people and clinged to them more than she did to the physical flesh and blood beings that were in that house that, I guess weren't particularly nice to her. So the more him and I were talking about these different shadow people and experiences, I was like, what if these are light beings and we just can't see them? Like our mind is blocking them out. Our brain is blocking it out because seeing them head on would probably damage our brains and nervous systems, because that can happen. So that was a lengthy explanation, but I think I did a good job.
It works.
Thank you, Victoria.
I got it.
A couple of things real quick. Last week's guest, Katie Grabowski, is in the house. Great to see you. And then next week's guest, James Keenan, is with us. So great to see you both.
And Trey told me he's going to go geocaching in late September, early October. So we can hook onto that train too.
Oh, there we go.
Geocaching,
Yeah.
All of us. Come on.
All right. So I have about a little more than 15 minutes left in the show. So in honor of our good friend, Coyote Chris Sutton, who passed away yesterday, I do want to play. Some of you have seen this on my Facebook. His drumming clip there in the basement of Mineral Springs Hotel. So this was filming for the Shadow Dimension. This is actually featured in episode 6. And I do want to go ahead and play that and talk a little bit about the energy there in Mineral Springs. You may experience that here on Friday when we go out there for him. I don't know how much, but you may actually get a chance to step in the Mineral Springs at least. And we'll talk a little bit about the activity that's been experienced there. But so this probably be very sad for some of us. So here's Chris.
We're actually below the ground here. That's why they call it the sub-basement. So what we have found, or I have found, doing drum circles or just offerings and giving thanks to the spirits down here does increase activity. Would you like a demonstration of
Yeah,
how the song
absolutely.
goes?
Let's see what happens with the drums. Anytime that you've done a drum circle down here for the Haunted Road Media Paracon, I've been upstairs running other investigations, so I haven't. We had you on Edge of the Rabbit Hole the one time to do a little drumming down here. There was a live stream show. This is a little bit different now. It's just the two of us, and we're here specifically to try to interact with whatever is going on down here. So
Okay.
I'd love this.
All right, we'll start with something slow, then we can move on to something faster after that.
All right. And the idea is that we're trying to connect with spirit almost to put us in a trance-like state.
Right, because the drum, when you follow the drum with your mind and with your eyes and your ears, it starts working on you. It starts making you more focused about what's going on around you. E-H-K C-S-C-M E-H-K C-S-C-M Whoa, whoa, E-H-K-C-S-C-M E-H-K-C-S-C-M Whoa, whoa, Good evening, grandmothers and grandfathers, spirits of the place and of outside the place. Mike and I are here to talk with you. We are here to respect you. We come here with all honor because we want to thank you for being who you are and for coming to see us, for coming to commune with us, and if you wish to speak to us.
All right. I still can't believe he's gone. That's our good friend, shaman, Coyote Chris Sutton. I was filmed last November. For those of you that have seen the Shadow Dimension docu-series, when we're upstairs in the hallway and I say goodbye to him, that was the last moment that I actually said goodbye to him. This was the last moment that I saw him. So, bringing it back around to Shadow Entity. So Chris had witnessed many shadow entities down there in that sub basement of Mineral Springs Hotel, which there is again, the open spring that's still there. The cistern's no longer there. They kind of packed it in with trash, but it's still essentially an open hole into the ground. And when he would do that drumming down there, a lot of times he said that he would see the shadows moving in and around the pillars and around the people. And in his interview footage that we have of him in that episodes, he talks about how he never really thought of them as kind of quote unquote shadow people before. He just thought they were spirit. But he's like, well, now that you mention it, yeah, I guess you would actually call them shadow people because the fact that they're shadowy and they're kind of have that humanoid figure. So it's fascinating to me, him harnessing that energy through the shamanic drumming and the spirits coming to him and coming into the room as those shadow entities. So Victoria, Nicole, you have any comments on?
Yes, there was a comment I rolled by earlier and I didn't see who said it, but someone had mentioned, I think it was Christopher, and his trucking gnomes. When they were in the South, he saw druids, I think said. Would that be the same thing as Chris? Like maybe it's reactivating something that was there before?
That's an interesting idea. So, the druids, of course, also being, tapping into nature like that, and utilizing music utilizing basically vibration like that. I imagine it would. I don't know a lot of Druid history and lore, but I guess enough to know that, sure, they were trying to either enter altered states of consciousness, interact and communicate with spirit. What I don't know is for sure whether when they did that, if they would have appeared as shadows to the Druids. But if you're having Coyote Chris doing something that's essentially the same thing, just here, in America, and he's generating, shadow entities that way that are just essentially spirit, then I could ascertain that yes, the Druids were probably doing the same.
I didn't know we had Druids here in the South, though I do personally know people who are Druids, but they're more modern day. What do they call them? Techno Druids, I think is what they call them now, because you get everything off the internet now. God bless Al Gore for creating the internet.
Don't even get me started there. Don't even get me started there. So I mentioned it earlier. What I did want to talk about here, as far as that location, Mineral Springs. So this is the hallway in which I saw the black smoke morph into the apparition of a little girl. There are 5 of us there that particular evening. And basically, that doorway directly there on the right-hand side is a room in which the spirit of a little girl had been. Many people interacted with her there over the years, including Coyote Chris. In fact, when we had him up there during episode 6 talking about the story of the little girl, we were getting all kinds of interesting meter activations up there. So, and he sensed that she was nearby when we were telling the story. But on the night in question, basically all the way at the end of that hall, and this was, I guess, 2 years ago now. Tom McNicholas, he's still down in the chat. He's familiar with this story because he was there. But the shadow smoke started all the way down at the end of the hall, kept creeping closer and closer and closer, kind of climbing up the wall on the right-hand side as it was coming forward. And at some point, that shadow, as it creeped up the wall on the right-hand side, morphed into the apparition of a little girl. So that was like the moment for me. Although people like our good buddy Rob Guthrie would tell me sometimes some of these shadows are just human spirits. I was like, yeah, but that was the moment they were confirmed for me. Okay, Rob's right. So
how could you ever question Rob in the first place? Come on.
He and I don't agree on everything. He's an amazing friend, but we don't agree on everything. Just like I don't always agree with Victoria on Hollow Earth. But Victoria, like you were saying, the headless shadow there is a human spirit. I believe that's what I saw there at Mineral Springs. A little bit of a different form, mine coming out of smoke, like what they were reporting there at the Conjuring house, where yours is just, he's already like fully formed right there, but as a shadow, right?
Yeah. Well, I've also seen the same thing. There's another negative. He's been reported as more of a pedophile type entity, because there's some of that stuff going over there too back in the day. And he did appear very smoky and misty like on the bottom, and it was swirling up, and then his top half was formed, and by the time he got in front of my car, he was fully formed. But wow. For the most part, I've always seen him formed. Maybe I'm not that fast, but
So Sarah's asking, were drum circles performed that night? Yes, they were, actually, because that preceded, or the drum circles preceded that investigation that we did. So basically, it was part of the Haunted Road Media Paracon. We had the conference, we went out for dinner, came back, and it went twofold. So some people stayed upstairs for Dave Nunley to do a history session of the hotel. Others went downstairs with Chris to do the drum circle. And then after they were both done with their little mini sessions, we came back together and split up to do the investigation. So that investigation, when we saw the little girl, was already after Chris had done the drum circle down in the sub-basement. So we were kind of trying to recreate that night when we filmed the Shadow Dimension.
Do you think maybe he woke something up?
I mean, it's possible. Like I said, watch the Shadow Dimension. He tells you right there that I know you have, but others that are watching this, he talks about seeing the shadows move about when he's done drum circles there in the past. So.
No, I meant the little girl. Do you think he woke her up?
Oh, and did he wake her up? I mean, possible.
Because I've had
possible.
Yeah, out there in spring, I've had a lot of little children and children-sized orbs hook on to me, if you want to call it that, because I give off this mom aura. I'm always the Girl Scout mother. So I mean, maybe he gave off like a dad aura or something, or
maybe because he mentioned that he always felt like she was waiting for somebody like her father to come along, which is very sad. So, and Tom is reminding us here that there was also a thunderstorm that evening. So, yes, there was that charge in the air with the thunderstorm as well. And I've seen a number of times where you go out on an investigation and you get a thunderstorm and it really charges it up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah, we had a really good one. It was during the middle of an electrical storm, and it was really good.
So we got about 5 minutes left in the show. Nicole?
Yes.
Alina has a question specifically for you.
Okay.
It's interesting that she's giving you this question, but I'm interested in hearing your response, though. She says, I have a question for Nicole. Who does she personally think a Hat Man is?
Santa Claus after he retires. That's a really good question. I haven't had any experiences with the Hat Man, so I don't really, I can't go from personal experience. But I think a lot of times with any of these entities, like, I don't think it's just one entity. I think that the Hat Man, I think it's Hat Men. I think it's several different beings that probably all have their own personalities, their own agendas, that sort of a thing. It does seem like from what I've heard with Hat Man, they're usually, I want to say malicious, for lack of a better word, or neutral. You rarely hear about like a really nice experience with the Hat Man, but just because you don't hear about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I don't think it's an entity that's actually wearing a top hat. I think that's how that figure is actually shaped. I think that is probably what its head looks like. I don't think it's clothing. I think it's, or maybe I'm totally wrong and it's some type of time traveling device that they're wearing on their head. Who knows? I'm a sci-fi girl.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because James Keenan was down in the chat earlier. I don't know if James is still around. But he thinks when it comes to the hat-wearing entities that the hat is technology. It
could be. Yeah, it absolutely could be, because you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because if you're wearing something on your head and you have if they have the connections to your neurons and everything, and if they figure out that is how you can time travel or something like that, like, to me, that actually kind of makes sense that it would be tech. Or it's their head. Well, so, because as far as I know, like, I've never heard of a Hat Man like taking off his hat and being like, "Good day, Mom. Good day, sir. Well, have a cup of tea." You never hear about it coming off. So I don't know.
Well, I've seen a hat person, if you want to call it that, wearing a cowboy hat. But I'm down here in the South, so maybe it's a geographical thing.
Maybe.
And again, I'm going to take the stance that it depends on the particular the particular entity, because I think some of them are, kind of like what you're saying, almost suggesting there, Victoria, that, hey, you're in the South, they wear cowboy hats, and maybe it's a human spirit that they have their clothing with them, and it's their hat.
Or what if they appear to you what you're most comfortable seeing?
That could be that.
Are people really that comfortable seeing a top hat, though?
Well, me. Yeah. I have a performing arts background, yeah.
Like Rosemary Ellen Guiley had suggested, like, when she was kind of saying, kind of purporting that most everything is a jinn, which I don't necessarily agree with. And, Rosemary Ellen Guiley was another one that had left us a couple of years ago. And she had done a lot of amazing research. But she has suggested that, the jinn, tricksters, all that were, putting themselves into some disguise that we would become familiar with. And, over the years, you'd have, like, the different style hats and everything, which is an interesting concept for sure. I like to throw out the example of the three hat-wearing entities with Albert K. Bender back in the 1950s, where they materialize into his room. There are three of them. They're shadowy in nature. They're wearing the hats. They have the glowing eyes. I hear that story as a paranormal investigator. I'm thinking, these are the Hat Men, where Bender thought they were extraterrestrials because he was heading up the International Flying Saucer Bureau. Other people hear the story and they're like, well, these guys were the Men in Black because they had scared him off of researching UFOs. So, which is it?
Yes.
Yes, there you go.
All of them.
Yeah. And so, Alina asked this question because she saw the hat. Yep.
Saw the hat. Very cool.
So,
well, I have seen one with like a baseball cap.
Oh, okay. There you go. See, I've actually, of all the shadow, and I've seen a ton of different shadow entities throughout my life. I've never actually seen one wearing a hat.
Because they've been indoors? They're polite or what?
That's it. So Anseline asks, what if it's like in egregore type thing, though, where some people misconstrued its shape as it being a hat, and it took on more of that shape over time. So I guess starting as something else, and because we always related it to being a hat, that it became a hat over time. I guess that would be the case if it was the same entity coming back again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it's kind of like when you watch these different sci-fi movies, or even when we're playing like, Tomb Raider, and they're like, it's the outsider, and people just, they come up with these funny little names for things that they don't understand. I know there's a bunch of sci-fi movies that do that. For the life of me, I can't think of any of them right now. But yeah, I think that's a good point, that people are just going to call it something because that's what they can relate it to, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what it is. Yeah. So even though they're calling it a Hat Man, because I mean, all they're seeing is a figure, it's a shadow, so they can't tell exactly what that formation is on that section of the entity. So for all we know, it's its feet. I mean, who knows? I don't know.
Robert Hannah saying that I should do a Hat Man documentary. So I do have, I think it's, I know on the Haunted Road Media channel I have the Men in Black episode, but Connecting the Universe class, I have done Hat Man versus Men in Black on there. So I think we just did that a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago.
Well, I saw a Slender Man that had a straw hat from like the Coney Island days with Judy Garland. Meet me in St. Louis. What's up with that?
A Slender Man. So you're talking a white entity wearing a suit and it had that hat?
Mm-hmm. And it had big white shoes.
Interesting. I have no idea.
That sounds like a clown.
That almost sounds like the Crooked Man from the second Conjuring movie.
Oh, well, I've never seen those. Oh, he was real skinny. I sent you a picture, I think. He was a skinny little guy, and he had these big white feet, and he had the beginnings of a straw hat that was starting to form.
I'd have to hunt it down if you did.
It was a long time ago. Okay.
All right. So, all right. Well, we are at the end of our show here. So I do want to thank Nicole for joining us in studio here to talk about the Shadow Dimension. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. It's streaming free right now on Tubi TV. I know Alina's tossed the link down there in the chat a few times. It's also in the description. If you're watching here on YouTube, it's in the description below. So you just click on it and go and watch it. Do that post show right now. So, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I know you had to come a long ways.
I did. It's a long trek from the bedroom to here.
I know. Victoria's cupping her ears.
My butt. Mm-hmm. Dear diary. No, what were you saying earlier? No, never mind. No.
All right, so let's go ahead and get to the shout-outs. Of course, Alina, thank you so much for moderating the chat tonight and sending me the questions. We do have Super Chat Superstars for this evening. So Tom McNicholas and Robert Hannah, thank you very, very much for being Super Chat Superstars this evening. So let me get to the participants tab here. See who's... Now look at that. We have all these... This drives me nuts with YouTube. We have all these people chatting, and That's all it shows for participants.
There's clearly more than
Clearly
that.
more. So, Anne Celine, thank you for joining us once again. Betty Lange, Betty's grand old folks, thank you as well. Debbie 08, thanks for joining us once again. There's Hunter Road Media's Fairy Queen, Diana Hilbert, thank you very much. Helen Espinoza and Jill Nimchinsky, thank you very much. Linz Haynes, great to see you again. Lindsay Bannon from Weird Weekends, great to see you, Lindsay. Had great catching up with you last weekend in Michigan. Mr. Kuman02, thanks for joining us. Natalie Gilbert, thank you for joining us as well. There's Robert Hanna and Sarah Youssef. Jennifer Bloomer's in there as well. And Andrew Cox, Andrew and his Trucking Gnomes. And we also had James Keenan and Katie Grabowski in the house. I also saw Adam Tillery lurking in there earlier. He actually threw down a comment in there. I was like, whoa, Adam came out of lurking mode for a moment. It's like impressive
Mark
stuff.
this day down.
Yeah. He does on occasion.
He does.
Yeah. Okay, let me kind of scroll through here, see who else we have. Tomic Nicholas, yeah. He's been there the whole time. He didn't even show up in the participants. I don't get it.
Aw.
EEQQ, thanks for joining us tonight. TFT Tarot for today, thank you as well. And let's see who else. Ren, okay, great to see you, Ren. Been a little while. And
You know who you're missing?
who am I missing?
Fungi.
I did not see Pungai today.
I did not see Pungai either.
I did not either.
No,
Not that I could see anything, but
Nick Graves, Mary Haygood, Stacy Comiskey, if I can speak correctly. All right. Guess that'll be about it for now. Join us next week for, like I said, James Keenan is our guest next week. We're going to be talking more Skinwalker Ranch. He was on there season 2, so we'll talk a little bit about that and his observations and readings that he took and what he thinks is really going on there. Kind of following up, we had him on back in the spring before the conference in June. And then for those of you that are part of the Connected Universe, Connecting the Universe interactive class is not airing this week because of everything going on with Chris. We had to postpone Edge of the Rabbit Hole until tonight. And we are headed out to Illinois for his visitation on Friday, so just no time to do Connecting the Universe this week. So we'll pick it up again next week. I will get out your monthly Q&A video tomorrow, however. So, all right, I think that'll do it. Victoria?
Mike, Nicole.
Thanks again.
It's so good to see you.
See you soon.
Bye.